.net. So not only are we live here in Las Vegas, we are live streaming around the world. So stick your hands up. Let's wave everybody on the internet. So hi everyone around the world. Welcome to Las Vegas. Welcome to AWS reInvent 2022. My name is Adam Bergh. We're going to be talking about completely integrated Amazon EKS data protection and app mobility. And I'm with Kasten K10. So just a little bit about me. We are, let me see if I can go back one. A little bit about me, and I'll talk about this slide. We are part of Kasten K10. We are a part of Veeam. We are the Kubernetes experts here within the Veeam portfolio. And just let's talk about Kubernetes for a little bit. I think everyone has a good idea that Kubernetes is exploding right now in popularity. The analysts are looking at the industry, and they're telling us things like, in the next couple years, 500 million new apps are going to be deployed as containerized applications and Kubernetes, more than the last 40 years combined, more apps being deployed as containerized applications in aggregate. This is pretty crazy. 75% of enterprises are saying that they're going to be running containerized applications over the next couple years, right? So this is really huge. But they've also asked these enterprises, these 75% of enterprises, what do you think about protecting this data? And 52% are saying, we don't really know how to protect this data because our legacy data protection tools, our legacy data management tools, they're just not ready for cloud native. They're just not ready for containerized applications. We're looking for new tooling, right? And that's really what Kasten is all about here within the Veeam portfolio. So just to cut to the chase a little bit about who Kasten is, if you've never heard of Kasten by Veeam, we do three things really, really well for your Kubernetes environments. Number one, of course, we're all about data protection here at Veeam and here at Kasten. We're the best tool out there for protecting your applications deployed on top of Kubernetes, whether that's Amazon EKS in a completely integrated way, or other Kubernetes distributions that you might deploy on top of AWS infrastructure like Red Hat, OpenShift, or potentially something like a Rancher distribution, like RKE2 on top of Amazon infrastructure. What's really great about Kasten is we're protecting your apps no matter what Kubernetes environment that they're living in, right, in a completely integrated way with Amazon. But we're also doing other things that really differentiate us in this marketplace. Number one is completely agnostic application mobility, right? Most people aren't just running a single Kubernetes cluster. We need to be able to seamlessly move our apps from one cluster to another, right? Whether it's an EKS distribution, maybe it's an EKS Anywhere distribution on-prem, maybe running on bare metal, running on vSphere. Maybe I've got dev test and production. I need to move applications. Kasten is making this really easy for our customers to take an application, move it from one cluster to another, right within a nice UI, right? We're taking away all that complexity from Kubernetes and making it really, really nice. We'll show some of that in our demo as part of this presentation as well today, so stick around for that. The last thing we're doing is you got to have disaster recovery. I think there's maybe a fundamental misunderstanding with Kubernetes that somehow the cloud providers are handling disaster recovery for me, right? No, this is something that you need to be thinking about as well. I need to be able to fail over our cluster maybe between different regions of AWS. Maybe I'm going to use the public cloud as my DR site. Maybe my DR site's on-prem, right? I need an agnostic way to fail over Kubernetes clusters in the event of a disaster for protecting everything, not only the apps, but also the non-namespace configuration of my cluster. Kasten K10 is providing for you as well. So the Kasten K10 platform, we're here at AWS reInvent. Let's talk about some of the integrations that we have with AWS. We're completely integrated with all the native AWS services, like their native storage platforms, Elastic Block Storage, Elastic File Services, IAM controls, KMS for key management provided by AWS. We're fully integrated across the board. We're integrated with Amazon S3. We're also integrated with Object Lock APIs for immutability. And we're going to be talking about what that's used for, why that's really important, why you should be thinking about immutable data protection, making sure that nobody can change, modify, delete my backups, right? Super important for a particular use case. We'll talk about that. We're integrated in cross-region replication, right? Making it really easy to move apps on native Amazon infrastructure and replication, right? For things like app mobility, DR, cross regions. And we're integrated into the Amazon Marketplace, so easy procurement, deployment, one-click deployment right from the AWS Marketplace. So we're the we're the primary data protection tool for all the Kubernetes that you're deploying, not only in AWS, but also on on-prem distributions like Amazon EKS Anywhere. this is really why organizations, I said that stat earlier, 52% of organizations were worried about their data protection because their legacy solutions weren't adequate. Applications inside of Kubernetes are completely different than traditional, let's say an application deployed on top of vSphere or EC2 or serverless. We have to protect more than just maybe our stateful data or we're snapshotting our disks. You have to protect everything that makes up a cloud native application inside of a namespace inside of Kubernetes. We've got service configs, config maps, secrets. We've got our networking configuration. Of course, we've got our PVs and PVCs that we need to protect. But all of this is what makes up the application, right? Kasten knows how to put back the application when something goes wrong, right? So we have a lot of customers that are trying to roll their own backup, right, for lack of a better term, like maybe creating a script, right? They might think they have the protection, but when something goes wrong, their scripts don't know how to put the application back together, right? So this is what we're making really easy. We can recover the entire application in totality, or maybe just repair the piece of the application that broke. Somebody accidentally deleted a secret. I deleted my config map. I deleted my networking configuration. I don't need to recover the entire application, but just a piece of it. Right? We make that really simple because we're looking at the granularity of the application and making that really, really simple for you guys. I want to take you through a customer scenario, though, recently that we were working with a customer that was struggling with a lot of really complex challenges with AWS and their Kubernetes. So this particular customer they're based over in the EU, so here are some of their requirements. So they're deploying Amazon EKS clusters in multiple regions. In this particular case, one in France in the EU West 3, and another EKS cluster in EU South. And they wanted to use infrastructure as code methodology for repeatable deployments, right? So that was one of the requirements. They needed to be able to do cross-region and cross-cluster backup in DR. So they wanted to make sure that each site was the failover site for each other. They also had a need to move applications on a regular basis between these. But they were also running some complex databases inside of Kubernetes like Postgres, Mongo, MySQL, and also Amazon RDS, which is an actual external database to Kubernetes, right? So that's another challenge. How do I make sure that I'm protecting that data that maybe it's outside of Kubernetes, that's linked to my apps inside of Kubernetes? They had a mix of underlying storage technologies that they were using, elastic block storage, elastic file storage for some of their applications, so they needed something that understands both of those storage types within AWS. They're worried about ransomware, right? They had been hit with ransomware in the past. They'd lost data. This is a big problem. They want to make sure that they're making, they got regulations to follow. They need to make sure that they're protected against ransomware as well. So some of the challenges that they had before they were talking to Kasten was their legacy data management solutions just weren't a fit for cloud-native apps deployed on top of EKS. They were trying to use some open source stuff. They were trying to use some legacy stuff, trying to write their own scripts. Just wasn't working. They had some big challenges with application consistency, right? So application consistency for some of those databases that we talked about. Databases are unique. Sometimes when you snapshot them, you need to quiesce them, you need to pause, you need to freeze. Sometimes you need to do a logical backup. You need some sort of application integration, especially things that work with Amazon, those apps that are deployed on top of EBS, EFS, and also S3. Right, so here's how Kasten came in and solved all of those solutions. So the Kasten K10 solution, so we can be completely deployed as infrastructure as code, right? So that was one of their requirements. They want to have well-architected, integrated, validated solutions with AWS. Kasten's a part of the EKS Blueprints Infrastructure as Code program, so we can be deployed in a consistent way across all of their EKS clusters. They need a deep integration with EKS, right? So they needed a tool that understands and works with Amazon, works with native Amazon AWS APIs to enable that cross-region approach, right? So very, very efficient, using native integrations with Amazon block replication. We enabled that cross-region requirements for app mobility and DR for them. They needed that support. Remember, they had those complex databases. Right out of the box, Kasten is supporting all of the databases that they had in use, Mongo, Postgres, MySQL, and also Amazon RDS with what we call our integrated blueprint technology. We've got pre-validated blueprints for these applications that will hook directly into those apps to make sure that they're quiesced and consistent when we protect them inside of Kubernetes. We're delivering all that of course, with the integration into EBS and EFS, meaning that we understand native hardware-based snapshot technology within those platforms. When we actually protect data, we take a hardware-based snapshot of EBS or EFS, before we take that external backup. So we're getting 2 recovery points every time we run a backup in data protection policy. And they had that ransomware use case. So Kasten K10 was the industry's first Kubernetes data protection to support object lock APIs from Amazon. So we can guarantee that our data is immutable. It can't be modified, can't be deleted. I have a guaranteed good copy of that data locked up in Amazon S3. Even my root administrators for my S3 account can't delete that data. So I'm even protected against rogue administrators or that disgruntled employee that you have to let go. He can't mess with your backup data. It's completely locked up. This is as simple as hitting a check mark inside our UI to enable Object Lock API. Right? So really simple way to guarantee ransomware and insider threat recoverability. One other customer use case, I know there's a lot of federal business here, and maybe some of you are working in the Fed space. One of our good partners, Leidos, is a tier 1 provider for the US government. They do a lot of DoD military Kubernetes clusters. They work heavily in US GovCloud. So they've got some really hard requirements for creating validated, consistent, compliant clusters for the US government. They had a challenge of it was taking them 45 days to roll out a single cluster for the US government because of all the compliance and regulations that they had. So this was a challenge of speed because of their scale that they're working at. Hundreds of clusters, right? Hundreds of multi-tenant AWS accounts. This was a big challenge for them. So what they were doing was putting together what they would call a gold standard EKS cluster with all the best applications pre-validated in there. And Kasten K10 was one of those pre-validated applications, providing them with all the data protection, disaster recovery needs in the pre-validated government level DoD secure Kubernetes clusters. So they were able to take that 45-day compliance and move it down to 3 to 4 days by using pre-validated infrastructure as code with Kasten K10 as part of that. So this is just an example of highly secure Kubernetes clusters deployed at scale with Kasten as best-of-breed solution, where we can take those clusters that were taking a very long time to deploy, take it down to just days, and future-proofing their infrastructure for government-level customers. So it's very, very secure, very, very powerful, and our customer Leidos is showing that. Right, we talked about ransomware. I just want to spend just a couple more slides on this before we jump into a cool demo. I want to show you the product, how it works. Of course, I think people think that because I'm moving to Kubernetes that ransomware isn't a problem, or my applications somehow are safe because now they're containerized and they're not running inside VMs or EC2. Just not the case. Kubernetes is no more or no less secure than any other environment, really. We're seeing this in our own clusters. Here at Kasten, we spin up hundreds of Kubernetes clusters for dev test. We've gotten ransomware in our own clusters, right? So we have firsthand knowledge that this is happening out there. You need to be thinking about this. You need to have a tool, right? So Object Lock APIs from Amazon are really a great solution for every time we're protecting data, we're making sure that there's a period of time where that data is locked and immutable. So we're taking advantage of that. It also is great for things like accidental deletion, insider threats, making sure I can tell my business, hey, I know my backups are there because I'm locked them up with AWS and S3, Object Lock APIs from S3. So just real quick, our data engine's really advanced. So as we're moving data from your Kubernetes clusters, we're moving that cluster metadata, the application metadata, that persistent data, we're sending it through the K10 engine, we're encrypting it, we're deduping it, we're compacting it, we're compressing it, we're incremental forever, and then we're putting it out in Object Lock API. So super efficient, incremental forever, encrypted, compressed, deduplicated data out in Object Lock API. So you can guarantee that, hey, this is not going to be super expensive, right? It's going to be the most efficient backups you can get out to Object Lock API. And we're moving that with our proprietary technology with Kasten K10. All right, so let's get into a demo. I think this is really cool. This is my favorite part of the presentation because I get to show you guys what we're doing here. So let me set up the demo for you. What we're going to be seeing in the demo is I've got an EKS Anywhere cluster. If you haven't heard of EKS Anywhere, that's Amazon's on-premise version of Kubernetes. I can run that on bare metal. I can run that in vSphere. So it's on any infrastructure, your infrastructure, right? And then I'm going to be moving an application up to the public cloud, so EKS running in the public cloud. So I'm going to show you how we do that with Kasten K10. How we do, we'll do a simple backup, and then we'll do an app mobility in this demo. And it moves pretty quick, so I'll talk us through it. So we're going to jump right into looking at the Kasten K10 user interface. So what we're looking at here is our multi-cluster dashboard. In Kasten K10, we can see all of our clusters from a single dashboard. You'll see we have our EKS Anywhere Dev cluster, and we'll jump into that. So we're looking directly at our EKS Anywhere Dev cluster. We're looking at our cards here. These represent our namespaces or applications. Let's click Details. Here's our corporate website. This is the one that we're going to back up and migrate. Here in the application details, we can see all the PVCs, we can see the workloads, all the metadata, everything that we protect about that application is visible here. Here's our production cluster up in the public cloud. No applications up there yet. So what we're going to do first here is we're going to create a simple global backup policy to create a backup of that corporate website. So we'll show you how to do that. We'll show you global profiles. We've already got that created. That's our AWS S3 location of where we're actually going to be backing up. Let's jump over to policies. We're going to create a simple backup policy here for that corporate website. So pretty simple here. We'll give this policy a name. First thing we want to do is set a snapshot frequency. That's a hardware-based snapshot. This is on EBS, or I'm sorry, this is on my local EKS Anywhere. So this is going to take a CSI integrated snapshot locally here. I'm going to select my corporate website. We select that external backup policy out to S3, and we create that policy. That policy automatically will be applied across all my clusters because it's a global policy. I'm going to run this manually so we can just kick off our first backup. The first backup's always a full. Everything after that's going to be incremental forever, like I mentioned earlier. So we'll see it right here within our UI. We give you a nice action window. We can see what's happening. We got our snapshot, and then we got our export out to S3. It's done. Let's just take a look at this website. I just want to prove to you that this is an actual website running here. This is running in our dev test. The website's up and running, but that's the one we want to move to production. That's the one we need to migrate off of on-prem up to the public cloud. We call our migration process an export and an import. So the first thing we want to do is create an export. That's just preparing the application to move to a new cluster. We click export here. We're going to copy a unique encryption code. This is a one-time use code here that we're going to use to encrypt that data to make sure that it's secure when we're moving between clusters. This export is just preparing the application. So once we're done exporting that, let's jump over to our production EKS in the public cloud. And we're going to create an import policy. This is a policy that we're just going to use one time. So we're going to create this import, make sure the application is restored back to the cluster. This is where the power of Kasten comes in. Now, because we're moving it between infrastructures, of course, the storage class is going to be different. So I need to change the storage class of this application to to a storage class that's in my EKS in the public cloud. So we're going to go ahead and change that. Pretty simple. So that's how we're changing the storage class on the fly when we're moving an application from EKS Anywhere up to the public cloud. Let's paste in my encryption key here. Select where my S3 bucket. And we're ready to create that import policy that we're just going to run at one time to move that application. Create that policy, and then we'll go ahead and run it. So this is actually going to do everything. Move that application from on-prem up to the public cloud. We'll watch that import policy run. Takes just a few seconds. And now you can see in my EKS public cloud cluster here, you can see we've got the corp website running. We'll click Details. You can see everything is there. The pods, the PVCs, the networking configuration, all that metadata. Let's jump back to my dev cluster. Now, I still have my corp website over there. I'm going to delete it off my dev clusters just to kind of prove to you that when I pull up the website again, it's not still running from my dev cluster. So let's do let's delete that namespace. Just a simple delete namespace here for my core website. You'll see in real time inside our UI, you can see how fast we are understanding changes in the environment, right? Right within our UI, you can see that application has been deleted almost instantaneously. We're jumping over to our public cloud EKS. And now, just to prove that this application is just only running in the public cloud, let's jump over to our website. And now here it is. This is running up in the EKS. From EKS up in the public cloud. We've now migrated from on-prem up to the public cloud for production with Kasten K10. So that's our demo. We have our experts standing by. Do you guys want to see this live? We're right over here. We've got 2 demo stations. We got our experts. I'll actually be hanging around for the next 4 hours maybe. So if you want to sit around and talk to me, we want to see more things, talk about your environment, what we can do for you. I'm Adam Bergh. I'm with Kasten K10. Thank you guys so much. Thank you everyone out on the internet, all across the world. Thanks guys for tuning in. And again, Kasten K10.
Thank you, Adam. All right. For the people